Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. So she is a UX researcher at Workday. I actually work with her. She's really awesome, and I'm really looking forward to this talk. She's working on the fastest selling new product in the company, actually, so no pressure. She has a strong passion for facilitating collaborative research. I know I've learned a lot from her recently within cross-functional product teams. She speaks about product case studies at Workday UX events and conferences. She mentors product managers to elevate their UX research skills through internal mentorship programs at Workday, as well as mentoring graduate UXers through external programs to help them land their first job in tech. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to introduce Bébhínn Sheridan C.
Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you all, thank you David, and thank you all for joining and staying on. I feel very honoured to be sharing the stage this evening with Bruce. Thank you for that talk and incredible insight into OKRs. I also have a page full of scribbles with lots of notes from that, so thank you. As David said, my name is Bébhínn Sheridan C. I'm a UX researcher currently working at Workday, where I've spent the past few years collaborating very closely on quite a special, well-integrated product team. And it's that collaboration experience that I'll be speaking about today. Now, that word collaboration can sometimes be a bit of a buzzword. We all know and have heard again and again about the importance of collaboration and the importance it plays in team success. But how does that actually play out in the field? So today I'm going to be speaking about the nuances of collaboration, specifically about collaborative research and the ways in which it has helped us to leverage the full power of our cross-functional team, as well as making the most of the user feedback we collect. But I'll also be speaking about the challenges that come with collaborating on a fast-paced growing team. So we'll get started, and just for a bit of context, more about my role at Workday. Most of my time so far has been spent dedicated to the help product, which is in the HR case management and employee experience space. So it really enables employees to get answers to their HR questions when and where they need them, as well as empowering HR teams to solve those cases quickly and efficiently. And I think what has been so unique about working on this product team is, like I said, how well integrated it is. Going back to before COVID, we were all co-located together in the Dublin office. And you can see here an example of how our Scrum teams are made up of product managers, developers, QA, and having UX designers embedded in each of those teams. Now you'll see UX researcher on the side there. My role is really working across Scrum teams, of which we have 3 now. And that's really to get a holistic view of the whole user experience, as opposed to being in a particular researching in one corner of the product. So I joined the team about 1 year before it went live to customers, which meant I was starting collaborating with the team in a very fast-paced, agile product development environment. And like David said, lucky for me, I got to be a part of the team that built the fastest selling new product in the company. Now, of course, while there are many factors to that success, I've pulled up a quote from one of our customers explaining what made Workday help so special for them. They said, it can't be stated enough how much better Workday help is than what we previously had. It's really clean, it's really simple, really easy to navigate, all the things that you look for. And they said, I think Workday did a lot of research to decide how they want to put this product together, and it shows. So focusing in on the research part here, as I'm sure many of you know, research in product development is very much under the hood or below the user experience iceberg. So I think it's a real testament to the team that it shines through the product to our customers. But of course, many product teams conduct research. So what makes our approach so different? Well, to start, I think there's a lot to be said for having a well-resourced team. When help was first created, a UX researcher was one of the first 5 members, which is quite unusual. And as we grew, there was actually a point in time where we had more researchers than we had designers. So for us, that meant we could really go far beyond gathering customer requirements and really, start the product journey based on the deep-rooted whys behind our end users' needs. But as a UX researcher, interpreting these needs, interpreting how they think, how they behave, it's really only half the battle, because we're just one discipline in a much wider team who have their own roles and responsibilities and perspectives on the design and build of the product. So to be in a position to be that one to have to challenge maybe some previously held assumptions, and be the one to advocate for what will and won't work for the end user, especially if they conflict with the customer, with what the customer wants, which is in our case, our end user is not our customer. And this is really arguably the hardest part of UX research, but is absolutely necessary to ensuring that the product is adopted and is useful in the long run. And there can be a number of factors that make this part so hard. For example, when other team members in your cross-functional team have a lack of visibility into that research process, and they don't have enough context around the user insights for them to feel meaningful, it's much more difficult to share that same level of understanding that you have as the researcher, the person carrying out the research. And naturally so, because they weren't there to see the users in action, perhaps struggling to find a feature or hearing their tone of voice change as they're expressing a really strong need. So for those team members who aren't a part of that process and don't get to see and get a sense of how the raw data evolves into the insights that you share, of course, it is harder to understand the value of those user insights. But it causes real issues when a lot of investment has gone into great research and has been carried out, but there isn't that trust there in the findings straight away. But this is where collaborative user research comes in as an opportunity to address these difficulties. The idea being that teams can better internalize the value of those user insights when the research process is inclusive and accessible across the different disciplines from the beginning of that research journey and throughout, so that we have the opportunity to continuously work towards a shared goal, and there are places for there to be a sense of shared ownership over the product, which sounds very good in theory, but how does that actually work in practice? So I'm going to talk you through now our attempt to make research a collaborative journey. And I'll be using an outcome-driven development project as an example. So for any of you who aren't familiar with outcome-driven development, it's an agile approach whereby a product team works towards achieving a customer and a user outcome as opposed to shipping a specific output. Similar to what Bruce was talking about this evening about focusing on outcomes and objectives. And the aim for this approach is for that outcome to be measurable and based on research, and it's intended to be iterated upon based on its measured success. So I'll talk you through this project, focusing specifically on research where we collaborated closely and how that actually played out. So starting here with the problem space, typically might just involve PMs and UX, but using this approach in this project gave us a chance to open this space up to the developers as well. And this meant getting everyone involved in the project, every discipline, to review past research, work up hypotheses and opportunities based on known user needs, so that we all had a collective strong understanding of the business outcome. And we have heard from devs in the past about the importance for them of understanding the why behind design and product decisions. So taking this approach offers that sense of shared ownership over what they build and trust in those decisions. So since the team had this shared understanding of the problem and the defined outcome, UX research were actually then able to play more of a supporting role. And once they had ideated on design ideas and built out prototypes, we actually had a UX designer and product manager which led this project and tested it with users to see if it would meet the desired outcome. And what that supporting role looked like for us as researchers was reviewing test plans and discussion guides, setting up templates like you can see on the right here, taking notes and demonstrating how to capture that feedback in a rigorous manner. So not only did this free up our time as researchers to conduct other generative research alongside this, but it also upskilled other disciplines in our team and how to research in a systematic way. And when it came then to conducting those user sessions, we really wanted to make the most of our time with our users by getting lots of different perspectives on how the prototypes were performing. So in this study, we had, say, 3 or 4 team members observing and taking notes in our templates that we had set out. And what I've noticed from putting the effort into to set up these observer sessions, having small groups of PMs, devs, and designers, is that when they observe something happen naturally in a live session, like I said before, seeing the user get lost or struggle or seeing their facial expression change and light up, it evokes this strong emotion in everybody in the room, whether that be a virtual room or in person, and it kind of helps to build that level of compassion, so much so that they feel driven to solve that problem for the user when the session ends. And for us, it's also been a great way to have the other team be advocates for the user's pain points, especially in later conversations where you as the lead on the project may not be present to speak to those findings. So for me in particular, I'm not embedded on the Scrum team. So when it comes to the likes of story mapping, having designers and devs who can speak to the value of those user insights is really, really powerful. Now, this next stage of analysis sometimes sparks a bit of controversy among the research community because there is, of course, a rigorous process and a science to analysis. But what I have found to work is giving the team a lightweight analysis activity as opposed to sharing the entire analysis responsibility with the whole team, or on the flip side, just blocking them out completely. So one activity that I often use is the 3 C's. So asking in small groups, what could have contributed to these findings? What are the consequences for the user? What considerations do we need to make as a team considering these findings? So really, this type of lightweight activity encourages them to, as you can see there, to read the raw data, whether it be post-its or notes, have time together to digest it individually, think about it, and discuss what do those findings mean for the user and what do they mean for us as a team. So this just helps in structuring those sessions and being specific about what you're asking of them, especially when this type of activity like analysis might be new. And when I spoke before about supporting PMs and designers in carrying out research, it's important to continue that support throughout. So for us, we align our work through regular sync-ups, UX and PM sync-ups. And this takes the form of a weekly meeting where the agenda is to discuss the findings and discuss them in context to what we're hearing from customers, like I said, aligning on our work and agreeing on next steps together. And then when it comes to sharing insights for this project, We wanted a way to maximize on all this great data that we had, videos, quotes, images. So it seemed to make sense that we should start sharing those out early on and try to do it in an informal way to keep the user top of mind as we're getting to the end of the process and prepping for a formal share out. There's a lot to be said for doing it both informally and formally. And by meeting the team where they already are in their natural workspace, it means then that those team members who mightn't have been directly involved in that project are also kept in the loop about what we're learning from our users. So for us, doing this via Slack was really key to generating interesting discussions and trying to increase that engagement in the research, both before and continuing on after formal shareouts. So by including the different disciplines in this outcome-driven development project from the start meant that those who were then working on the solution had sufficient context into the problem space. They know where the raw data came from, how the insights emerged, and gradually were then able to internalize the value of those insights by the time it was ready to build it out. So really, this is just one example, but by taking this approach with other studies to follow meant that we could start to pave the way forward with user insights, with a focus on really trying to create those meaningful experiences for our users and our customers, and not just churning out those features. And thankfully, the value of this work was understood from the top down. We had an OKR set by leadership where we had 5 UX research-based features built over the course of 6 months. So that was a huge achievement for us, where we were able to move faster and better by collaborating with one another. And with that impact of the research shining through the product to our customers as it launched, we got continued investment in the product from a resourcing point of view. So with that fast pace and the team growing to the point we're at today with nearly 50 team members across the team, and that includes 3 researchers, as well as our fantastic designers and PMs, also empowered to carry out research. So with that, we're able to take our research game up a notch. And recently this year, we've been able to run multiple studies in tandem. Okay, so what? More studies means more data, more opportunity for collaboration, and obviously better informed design and product decisions, right? Well, kind of ish. Unfortunately, we came to learn that it's not as straightforward as that. Okay, welcome to collaborative research at scale. We have learned the hard way that moving quickly with lots of different actors involved, more data incoming from different directions, can get very messy if there isn't a process in place that supports the flow of all of these insights and collaborative input. And that's when we came up against our first real challenge. Delivering quality insights in time for them to influence design and product decisions. Now, I'll give you an example of this. So we're running multiple studies in tandem. We reach a point where we have data from usability testing, from concept testing that the designers are doing. We have new emerging themes from generative research, all becoming congested before we could collaboratively make sense of it all in a meaningful way. Now, this is particularly important, say for the likes of usability testing, where we might have a much needed UX improvement that could be competing against a customer request for the roadmap. And as I'm sure all of you know, those customer requests come in hot and heavy. So especially when your users are not your customers, it's so important that you can process and align and demonstrate the value of the end user's needs and that experience where and when those product decisions are being made. Okay, so first challenge, we figured out time is of the essence. Surely, as long as we can just analyze and share our user insights in a timely manner, then we're all good. Yeah? If only it was as linear as that. Another challenge we came across was needing to find those user insights so that we could build on knowledge and avoid wasting time and resources collecting information that we actually already had. So this is particularly important for the likes of design testing, prototype testing, whereby designers can get a better head start if they're reusing the feedback that we've already gotten from, say, similar designs, similar patterns, instead of starting from scratch, trying to find answers that we may actually already have. Okay, let's take a moment to look at these two challenges and think about what it would look like to solve them. The first one, right, requires agility and speed to produce timely insights. But the second one requires slowing down and stopping at certain stages to track and document your insights so that they have longevity. So we need to go fast and slow at the same time. How is that going to work? Unfortunately, there is no out-of-the-box formula for this. Or if there is, we haven't come across it and it hasn't worked. The same way that every team is different, every process will be different to meet the unique needs of your team. But the good news is we have spent some time trying and testing different variations of our process, and I have those tips to share with you today. Okay, so we're getting into the nitty-gritty now of figuring out all these challenges and considerations and how to really leverage the power of all of that user feedback that you've collected, and that should serve you again and again. Like I said about meeting the unique needs of your team, the size of your team, the pace of your team, it's all about finding the right flow that works for you. One good habit to start building is tracing your insights for future findability. So what I mean by this is tracing the insights wherever you're housing them back to their raw data. For us, we use Trello. I know there are other tools out there. I'd love to, like Airtable, I'd love to hear about your experiences with other tools that you've tried. But whichever tool you do use and you try, the main thing here is to link it back to your supporting documents, link it back to your notes, your analysis, the designs that you tested, so that when you go to pull them up again, you or whoever needs them has sufficient context to reuse them without them being misinterpreted or lost in translation. And following on from this, as you're choosing methods for documenting all your great work, make sure it's accessible by the team members who need it. You don't want to be in a scenario where you are the one and only gatekeeper of that knowledge. For us, again, like I said, we chose Trello because it was familiar for the team. They're used to going in and out of that tool. And you may have a chance to try out a new tool, a fancy tool. But if your team isn't willing or able to access what's in it, then it's not fully serving its purpose. So be sure to keep that in mind and try it out before you go to that effort of putting all your insights through it. And so the next one, if you did what we did and went on a rampage when we first started working from home, using every tool under the sun for different stages of the process, from Excel into Trello, then into a collaborative tool like Miro, back out to Trello, into Google Drive and beyond, you'll probably find that you're doing more heavy lifting on the admin part getting your work in and out of tools, then on actually maximizing the time with your team, doing that really impactful collaborative work in getting the user insights out on time. And this all feeds into streamlining your process to avoid it becoming congested in key areas. Some of those key areas, for example, might be having enough time to analyze the findings and synthesize them with previous findings. So if you're doing the first and the second one right, if you're able to trace your insights back and find them again and look at them in the context of that study you did 3 months ago, or that generative piece you did last year, in the context of other studies, and being able to build on those insights and process them in time, get them to the point of prioritization in time for them to have an influence on those product decisions. That is really, really powerful. And lastly, one last tip, thing that we are continuously trying to do is experimenting with insight tracks. So this could look like pulling out quick wins from your findings that can be fast-tracked onto the roadmap and separating them from a different type of study or a different type of findings where you have new emerging themes that might need a dedicated collaborative working session to delve deeper into those findings and figure out how to turn them into actionable insights. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to take in, but these are just some of the key considerations that helped us to build out a collaborative research process and keep building upon that so that it works for our team as it grows and changes. But whatever stage you're at, like I said, whatever size of your team and the pace that you're going, the most important thing I think to remember is that whatever approach you find, it's important that it's dynamic. And what I mean by that is that it should be flexible to the context of your team and responsive to change. Because as we all know, everything keeps changing and we can't do anything about it, especially in how we work together. So, you could put the perfect remote collaborative process together, but soon we may have to face a new challenge of, how do we do all of this across hybrid working environments where some people are in the office collaborating and you have 1 or 2 people at home? At least when we're all working from home, we're on the same level, contributing in the same ways remotely. But when we're in different spaces, that key part of being dynamic is what will really keep your momentum going, is being really committed to that and iterating on your process like you would with your product and always looking for ways to maximize your collaborative efforts. Okay, we've covered a lot today. Enough of me talking. Now it's over to you. Whether you practice research at your organization or if this is all completely new to you, these collaborative research practices that we have covered today and that you've seen can be made accessible to all of the functions on your team. And they can also be used as guidelines for trialing collaborative research on your team, even if it's something that's very new. So if you find yourself in a scenario where it might be a struggle to communicate the value of user insights and the impact that they can have on the product, take a collaborative approach. For us, it has really been a strong place to start. And as you move faster and better together, be sure to iterate on your process with a focus on really building on that knowledge and supporting the timely flow of those user insights and your collaborative input. But most importantly, if some things change or don't work out, just try and embrace that change, and be dynamic in your approach. So I hope this talk is it's generating some questions and interest about UX research and how it can work for you and your organization. These are definitely skills that can be shared and built across disciplines. I have just put in a link there to joinlearners.com. It's new from the UX Research Conference, and it's free. There's a lot of great content in there, everything from introductory up to advanced. So if you're looking to learn more about UX research, I'd advise that's a good place to start. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm happy to take questions now and also to keep the conversation going after this talk as well, if anyone wants to connect and reach out on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Bébhínn. That was really excellent. And you know, it was great not here. I think you called it out, not only how things work in theory, but how things work in practice at your team in Workday, which is what our community here is all about, sharing these type of examples. So really appreciate all the examples you shared. So folks, just if anyone has any questions, if I could just invite you to add them into the Q&A panel, please, of the platform. Again, scribble down loads of notes here. I love the example you shared of the canvas. I think it's called like the Lean UX canvas. You know, to get everyone involved. I thought that was really powerful, and I know you called it around kind of upskilling and all those other benefits that the team got from participating in that. So lots of knowledge bombs I've written down here. Okay, so just whilst we're taking questions, we've also posted the link to joinlearners.com that Bébhínn mentioned there in the chat. Okay, so we'll start with our first question. How do you find taking this high collaboration approach in a remote environment?
Oh, it's definitely tough switching to remote, because you know, as I'm sure, David, you're used to with agile coaching, when you're in a room, you have the buzz of everyone being in the same place, and that energy is what keeps it up and keeps everyone being able to go on for, you know, a 2 to 4 hour session. So I think that is something that you need to be really mindful of when you're working remotely, that it's not the same type of effort, and folks don't have the same type of capacity when you're staring through a screen rather than being together in the same room. So I think the point of, you know, really maximizing your time together is particularly important when you're working remotely, and that will involve really planning out your session so that you're only asking for the input that you really need and can process and have time to process, and that you're being very specific about what you're asking of your team, so that you're not wasting their energy on discussion, and really trying to keep it to a minimum. I would generally try and keep those high collaboration sessions under an hour and a half, with a short break in between there. And like I gave an example with those analysis activities and working sessions, having that very prepared, having that structured so they know what's being asked of them. And it doesn't do any harm to give a lot of advance notice as well. This is what we're going to be covering. This is the material that might help to read in advance if you want them to read up on research, to kind of reduce that time spent in that remote session, and give folks a chance to, in their own time, if you need them to read up on things or have a brainstorm beforehand, have them do that in their own time, so that you've got, you know, the full energy when you do come together in that session.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And agreed. There's definitely different challenges in terms of engaging people. I like that idea of like maybe limiting to an hour and a half as well, just to keep the energy up. So thanks, Bébhínn, for that. Question from Sean Norton. So as you scale to 50 people, did you find any challenge in including engineering and other disciplines who might be getting busy executing and not be able to find the time to really engage?
Absolutely. And definitely taking that dynamic approach and being mindful of the capacity of the other disciplines on the team is really important. So that is a really good example of what would have worked for us with a slightly smaller team. And as we grew, we then started to experiment with different methods for the team to contribute. A great way to do that is to try both synchronous and asynchronous methods. So to try and reduce the amount of say engineers that we have in a working session, rather than throwing it out to the whole scrum team, be very specific on who it's most valuable for them to be there. Say maybe just take 2 engineers, and then for the rest who you want to keep in the loop and want to get input from, take it to Slack. We did that on, say, our session was on the Thursday, and on the Wednesday before that, we put in the main question or 2 questions that were going to be addressed in the session, which was that we wanted to hear from the developers about the behaviors that they thought were learnable or not learnable, because we were setting up to do a diary study and we were going to be brainstorming on that and getting their input. So we just posted those questions in the Slack channel, and we have a no meeting Wednesday. So posting that in the morning was the perfect opportunity for engineers if they had time. And they did. We got about 15 responses of things that they wanted to find out from the studies. And so that was a way for them to give that lightweight contribution that suited them, that only took not even 5 minutes of their time. And the engineers that we did involve, we were able to get the most out of that session. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Bébhínn, and thanks, Sean, for the question. So again, any follow-up questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. We do have time for one more question. Yeah, so Bébhínn, any tips on balancing? I think you mentioned user and customer needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really drilling that in and putting in time into the analysis and synthesis process, and having those structures in place, that you are bringing product managers in early and often, and setting up those working sessions so that you're not, as a researcher or as UX, you're not going through the whole analysis process and formulating really polished insights to only find then, when you have maybe a really polished share out, that, well, actually that really conflicts with our customer needs, and you might not get that feedback. People might not be comfortable saying, well, actually we're not this conflicts with what we're doing, we're actually not going to go ahead with that. So if you have the opportunity to bring product managers in early on, when you're in your analysis phase. For us, we analyze in a collaboration tool like Miro. So bringing people in when it's still in that editable, rough and ready format, and having a space to talk about customer needs, to pose them against our user needs, and have time to think, okay, which of these conflict and which of these complement each other, and where is there an opportunity to we don't like using the phrase hit 2 birds with 1 stone, but feed 2 birds with 1 scone, basically.
Thanks very much, Bébhínn, for that. So guys, we could take more questions, but I think we're just about out of time tonight. Thanks so much again, Bébhínn. It was really, really interesting to hear the story of your teams and all those tips and tricks you shared. Just if people want to contact you, is there any way they can get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Either on LinkedIn, my name, Bébhínn Sheridan C, or also bébhínn.sheridanc@workday.com. I'd be more than happy to continue the conversation and hear from other people's experiences.
Excellent. Thanks so much again, Bébhínn. And I'll see you around soon, I presume. So yeah. Great. Thanks again.